We started working on what we call wearable technologies, where we started saying, okay, how do we integrate textiles and electronics together in order to be able to service these opportunities? The reason that we were set up as a separate entity was that we could really question things from the beginning and question the very fundamentals of which MAS is built around.
Hello, you're with Echelon's Rocketship Experience, where we are featuring Sri Lanka's most innovative companies who, despite the challenges, are on investment and growth mode. And in the studio today with us is Ranil Vitarana, who is the Chief Technology Officer at one of Sri Lanka's largest companies, MAS Holdings, and he also leads its innovation unit, which is called Twinery. So Ranil, let's start with innovation, right? This is a vast area we are talking about, and at MAS and in this unit called Twinery, you are trying to innovate around apparel mostly. Tell us what you're doing. Give us some context here first.
Okay. So maybe take a step back and start and say, so MAS obviously has been a very successful company. They've been sort of doing what they do best over the years. About 9 years ago, they set up this innovation organization, and the expectation was that the reason that we were set up as a separate entity was that we could really question things from the beginning and question the very fundamentals of which MAS is built around. And so as part of that, the remit officially is that we look at our traditional apparel and textile business, try to see what technologies we can bring in order to improve the way they do it, but in a disproportionate way. So can we have 30-40% improvements in the way we manufacture, etc., as well as can we create new products that will take leadership positions in the market. Apart from that, we are also tasked with sort of creating the next adjacent opportunity for MAS in the apparel and textile domain. So the domain is narrow in terms of apparel and textile, but of course we can go anywhere.
Questioning fundamentals. This sounds straightforward, but I suppose this is fundamentally a very difficult thing to do. How do you approach questioning fundamentals as far as your domain is concerned?
So firstly, what we did was we assembled a team of people who are not from our background. Therefore, when you say this is how you stitch something or this is how you put these things together, they can say, okay, so why are we using stitching? Is there no other way to do that? So those people were novices to the industry, and as a result, they were questioning everything we did. It takes 3 weeks to develop a product. So why does it take 3 weeks? Why can't you do it in 2 days? Sort of things like that. So that sort of fundamental questioning came by bringing in people from outside the industry. And then giving them the freedom and making sure that we didn't say, no, that's the way it's done. And sort of saying, okay, yeah, you're questioning me at a very fundamental level of what I do every day. And I'm fine with that, and I'm actually encouraging you to do that. That's an attitudinal change that we had to have in the organization. And it helped that we were in a separate sort of team.
How is it for you as a leader? We are all used to accepting certain fundamentals about our environment, about our industry, right? And then you are suddenly a leader of a unit where you're not allowed to do that. Was that how do you transition into something like that?
Good question. So it's a lot of you telling yourself. I also learned from experiences, and through my journey, there's a few gentlemen who I've had the pleasure of working with, who when I was little, when I was a young employee, said, I don't want to grow up and become this person. And these are people who said, no, this is the way it is done. This is the way we are structured. This is the way, don't question those things. And so those people, so from very sort of young age, in as I was started working, I grew up saying I don't want to be that person when I grew up. And so every time I exhibited those kinds of tendencies, I always went back and either apologized to whoever I did that to, or so made sure that I was always open to that kind of questioning.
Right. You talked about moving into adjacencies in the textile and apparel business at MA. So this is where you're looking for the opportunities to innovate, right? Give us an example. What exactly are you exploring from a, if you were explaining this to a guy on the street, what are those adjacencies?
Right. So I'll explain a little bit. So it's about trying to understand what is it about that what we do, which is really adding value. What is it that we know that other industries don't know? So one of the things is that we deal with this material called a textile that we all take for granted because we wear it, we throw it, we literally wash it in a very sort of
violent
manner. 50, 100, sometimes even 200 times, and these products really last, right? They conform to your body. They have a drape and a beauty about something that humans are find it very easy to interact with. Textile also is a product that is relatively cheap and easy to make as a material, and us as humans are used to wearing a textile product on our body for extended periods of time. Right? We can wear it for 12, 24 hours without really complaining about it. And so when we looked at it from that perspective and we sort of said, okay, there are lots of these plasticky products that humans interact with. Can we sort of really try and make that interaction better? So we sought a few industries, the medical industry where you have a lot of devices that people are now more and more interacting with. Then we also found the electronics industry where we are having from phones to keypads to, wearable devices, watches, all these things, AR, VR, goggles, things that are going to become more ubiquitous as we go along. So all of those are things that humans interact with, which maybe we can make that interaction much better. And so as a result, we started working on what we call wearable technologies, where we started saying, okay, how do we integrate textiles and electronics together in order to be able to service these opportunities. And so that was one area. But again, when you start getting into textiles, there are so many things that users expect. Exactly what I was talking about, the fact that you take your clothes off and throw it in a corner and then have another, 5 kilos of clothes topped up on top of that. Then you put it in a washing machine, maybe in a dryer, right? In a dryer, it spins at something like 16,000 RPM, creates about 20,000 volts of static electricity, right? So it busts up any electronics. So if you take your regular phone or anything like that, you wouldn't put it in a washing machine, nor would you put it in a dryer, right? But the product that you put on clothing is expected to last through all that. So we had to really develop technologies and solutions that allowed that to happen. So that was so exciting.
So we've associated apparel with function, but also with fashion, right? Do you see that as sometimes an innovation challenge that you need to solve, or are you fully invested into this wearable tech and stuff like that?
No, so in fashion, you have also various things that are now taking place, right? So for instance, a new challenge is the metaverse. Right? So we are now already looking at trying to say, okay, how do you have products that will work in the metaverse and then in the in the physical world? How do we make sure that when people sell a product, a fashion product in the metaverse, that you can have a solid product of that in the physical world? And so how do we make that possible? So there are things like that. That's a little bit more futuristic that we're working on. But definitely fashion or the need to differentiate yourself or give yourself an identity through your clothing and behavior is a basic human need that we can empower.
Okay. So that's how you define it, the need to differentiate yourself through clothing, right? Brilliant. Okay. Tell me about this metaverse thing, right? Okay, we've heard about this. Do you anticipate a world where you will own a sort of mirror image of everything you have on the metaverse in the physical world?
Maybe not. Honestly, it's very early stages and difficult to understand how that might morph. One of the areas that we're seeing the metaverse and real life sort of, well, maybe not real life is right the word, but the physical world coming together is in the gaming industry. So in the gaming industry, you have different avatars that you create of yourself. You can buy, you can dress that person up, etc. And then these people are also in gaming forums and things like that. Then they are in real life in situ playing games as well. And so as they sort of morph between this one and the other, they like to try and keep their identity. Right? So there is opportunities for us to develop. How fast this is going to happen for the rest of the human race, we don't know. We want to wait and see how that morphs. But I think the future generations will always find it easier than we say us. Maybe we might not necessarily jump into the metaverse wholeheartedly, but I think in the future you might see people doing that.
So each of us may have several avatars that we want to, live up to in the physical world as well. Huh?
Yeah, and I think the benefit is like, say for instance, I could be wearing this product and sitting here and say having a chat with my banker and appearing like I am now, and having a chat with my friends appearing in a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. I haven't changed my clothes. It's just how I am projected, across the computer or the screen on the other side. So you could be having a bunch of clothing in the metaverse as well as a bunch of clothing in the physical world, and you can be sort of going vice versa on those things.
You really put some thought into this, right? How this is going to play out.
we have, and it's part of the job, and it's a fun part of the job as well. Try and understand how that world might really change and how we might be impacted first and foremost. So is it a threat? Secondly, if it's an opportunity, what might we have to do in order to take part in that opportunity?
Okay, so let's rein this in a little. Let's talk about the real stuff that you're doing right now, that you have prototypes for or potentially in production, right? Wearable tech is a big area for you, right? What do you think are the big challenges for a company like yours? What are those big pain points in wearable tech that you think if you solved, you'd really have an edge in the market?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for us is understanding the real, not the consumer, but the customer, right? So if you talk about, we say a company like, we say Apple produces many devices that are bought by millions and millions of people. So one of the things is that there is a finish that you get in a electronics product, which is something that we don't have in apparel. So it has very clean edges. It feels, I would say, sophisticated to your hand, and people associate with that, right? When you touch a phone, you compare the phone, you can see whether it's an expensive phone or a cheap phone, etc. So part of what we need to do is to make sure that we can get our product to that level of craftsmanship that is built into it, that you're going to start seeing that kind of finish and finesse, I would say, right, in the product. One.
You're referring to wearable tech or apparel in general here? Wearable tech.
Wearable tech.
Right.
And if it's a medical device or a wearable tech device, I think we have to be at that level of sort of getting it right. Secondly, I think there is when you look at these devices, they go from a launch of 0 pieces to like 16, 17 million units, 20 million units, 100 million units. We have to be able to scale things
Right.
to that level. And so that requires certain amount of automation, engineering that needs to happen that allows us to also scale to that kind of levels. I think those are two areas. Third area is possibly around testing and standards. Again, textiles in electronics don't have testing standards. So you either have the plastics and the electronic standards or the clothing standards. And I think we need to create a new set of standards around this that becomes acceptable, that allows the supply chain and everyone to make sure that you produce to a certain standard, you test to a certain standard, it gets passed. So that's also important. So I would say those three.
So when you're trying to sort of solve for these three challenges and whatever else that are adjacent to these, how do you go about it? Do you reach for a tweaking of a product that may get it across the line? Or are you taking moonshots here and trying to create something completely, something that we can't really imagine at first?
So the way we go about it is we try to understand what the consumer problem that we are trying to solve for. And through that, we also try to understand what opportunity are we solving for. The problem is something that the consumer identifies. The opportunity is a commercial opportunity, whether that product can actually be sold, how much are these people willing to pay for it, and do we have the right customer, the supply chain, the distribution to get it across to the consumer at that sort of price point and still make money doing it. And then we try to see whether we have a right to play in that, right? So sometimes although a need has been identified, we might not be the best at solving for it because that solve is maybe not in our wheelhouse. Someone else is able to solve for it much better than us. I'll give you an example. We were developing something for foot ulcers, right? So you have diabetic foot ulcers, one of the biggest problems that people have. Because they're diabetic, they don't have sensation in the foot and they don't feel this ulcer coming through until it becomes ulcer. Then it takes years and years to sort of heal. So we were going to make a sock that was medically treated with some sensors that was able to sort of detect. So as much as it was improving blood circulation, it could detect. Monato University had done some research in the 50s that found that before about 3 weeks before foot ulcer came up, in that location the temperature would go up by 2 degrees. Right? So this is University of Monato research
in the 50s
that was done. So we found this research and then we said, okay, if we have sensors that can sense whether there's a temperature increase, we can now say that there's going to be a. Now that meant that the person had to be these people had to be wearing our socks all the time. But then again, we also felt that an easier way of solving for that would be just to develop a mat, right? You have on your bedside every day when you get off your bed, you put your legs on it and automatically it can detect what is happening. Therefore, that solution didn't exist, nor did ours. But we felt that if we went with a sock solution and someone came with a mat solution, we would get disrupted. So therefore, we decided against going.
Sometimes, people criticize, or consumers sometimes criticize wearable tech because I suppose their experience hasn't been so great with it. We've all had great experiences with, wristwatches that can track a number of data points about you. What will it take for wearable tech to start having that level of utility, you think?
So the beginning of wearable tech, I think it's on that hype cycle, right? So we were on that original hype cycle in the, I would say 2013, 14, 15, that sort of time. And then it really went down to that valley of sort of despair, as it were, and then sort of it's coming back up again. And what you're seeing now is that the solutions are much more tangible and for solving more real world problems. So you're finding at the beginning people were trying to solve for problems that maybe didn't really exist, or that people couldn't really, didn't want to spend a lot of money coming up with. Now, the problems that you're solving are a lot better. Data speeds, etc., are much better now, and computing is much better. So, and you're seeing other parties coming in with other technologies that sort of help us to make this real world. So if you take your watch today, original watch was just about telling time. Now it can, and watches went out of fashion because your phone was giving you your time. Then now it's back again because now you can see your messages, answer your calls, check your heart rate, and various things like that. So now whatever you build has to be something that adds value to that entire experience, which is driven by your phone and your watch and whatever device we might put on the body. So all together, all of them has to give you a sort of holistic solution to your day-to-day life.
So you are sometimes solving for problems that cannot be addressed. I mean, I'm sure that the horizon on which you can solve it may be a little long, right? So in a situation like that, where you're solving for multiple problems, where some of them have long gestation times maybe for a solution, how do you measure success? What is, I mean, you are the leader, you've got to make the case for investment. What are those measures you would put in front of your board to make your case?
So we try to look at it as a portfolio. So if you talk about an investor having a portfolio, you're not expecting everything in that portfolio to be successful, first and foremost. Secondly, you want to balance that portfolio with some short-term as well as some long-term, and less risky and high risk.
Right.
So we, when we are presenting everything, we have green for low risk or high chance of probability of success, to orange to red. So we understand where we are. Each decision can be taken with that lens on. We look at our portfolio quite often.
So there's actually a traffic light like thing that you put in front of people?
For sure.
Oh, right.
For sure. And then also we show the impact that we are making. So if we say in 2022, this is the turnover that is driven to MAS as a result of the work that we have commercialized. And this is how we project it for 2023, 24, 25. So they know what we are aiming at, how many projects to commercialize, etc. So it's portfolio management.
So you're not putting basically all your eggs into one basket, for sure.
Not the high risk basket, for sure, and not the low risk basket either, right?
Right. So if you look back, Ranil, you won these recognitions, these accolades from Fast Company and also Thomson Reuters, I think. In practical terms, what has been your unit, Twinery's contribution to MAS?
I would say in different ways, right? So you spoke about it. Sometimes we are ahead of time. Sometimes we are on time. Being on time is a lot tougher than being ahead of time. I think that's a little easier. But what we do is we are future-proofing the organization. That's how we look at it, right? So we look at what we call headwinds. How are things going to change? It can be based on, say, labor arbitrage. It could be based on, economic sanctions, other laws that are going to be passed, etc. Those are things that are probably more tangible or easy to sort of imagine. Then you start getting into things that you can't, that you sort of a little bit further than that, around what might be woke, right? So for instance, we know that sustainability, we knew 3 or 4 years ago that sustainability was going to become important. We had to work 3-4 years ago to have those solutions ready now. Now, similarly, we know that in the future, traceability is going to be important. How do we trace where my product came from, how my product got recycled, where did it go? So again, we have to work in advance. Now, will that become a reality in 2024 or 26 or 28? Honestly, don't know. Because it takes a lot of things for people to sort of make that a priority. If we have another war, then it becomes deprioritized, things like that. So
I suppose the ultimate test for innovation is how successful you are at commercializing it, right? Is that the ultimate test?
So the very definition of innovation, as opposed to invention, is that you commercialize,
right?
Let's say intellectual property, right?
Right.
And so by that virtue of that, it is about commercialization. There are other things that also bring value to you as an organization. You have halo products, right? That bring people to you because you're involved in those things. So there is a indirect benefit that innovation unit brings into your organization. It helps you to attract talent into your organization. It brings in different kinds of partnerships. So there is another sort of, I would say, intangible set of benefits that do come in that cannot be underestimated.
Sure. Is there a way you can sort of simplify Twinery's contribution into mass, in terms of
turnover
impact, something like that?
Let's say that, so right now we are about 10% of MAS's turnover comes as a result of something that we have created, and the target is for us to get to about 25% of everything that MAS produces to have an innovation component in it, or a sustainability component. So through something that we own, something that is our intellectual property. And so that is that's the top line ambition.
Sure. MAS is fairly narrowly focused. It is in apparel and textiles. So to use your own phrase, everything under the sun is not under MAS's wheelhouse. But when you come across opportunities which require capability beyond MAS's own wheelhouse, what happens? Do you have to abandon those projects along the way? Or is there any other way you can commercialize them?
So some we try to understand. So we try to understand our right to play.
Right.
What we call our right to play. So that may because we might have the route to market, we might have the raw material, might have the manufacturing skill. It could be one of those things, right? Or we could be having a reputation in that industry that we can sort of. So then, even if it's not something in a traditional wheelhouse, we might find a different way of being part of it. So that right to play is really important. So either you have a reputation that you take into it, you have something like that.
So in such collaborations, are you then technically the lead partner, or
we could be the middleman? We could be the lead partner. We could be so we might not be physically making a product. We might be actually selling the product, which is a little bit, not a little bit, but very different to what we're used to. In some instances, we are creating a brand. We've done that a couple of times as well. We are not the best at it, but we might be we might start off as creating a brand just to show that there's a market and a need and a willingness to pay. Then we will then bring in the right partner to help us to scale it.
Recently, we've heard that a unit you now call Soft Matter, which you may have to demystify for us, is now an independent play within MAS. It was sort of incubated at Twinery. Tell us what the story behind this is, right?
So our job is literally to give birth and develop a business opportunity and incubate it to, I would say, adolescence, and then then it sort of stands on its own as an independent body within MAS. It goes from that innovation side of the business to the core side of the business. What we call wearable technology was developed within our remit at innovation. And now it is sort of, in the process of spinning off. And so it has its own identity called Soft Matter. It goes as a B2B business. It doesn't manufacture its product, so it's mainly developing product, selling product. It's still housed within our premises. And but we have its own CEO who's based out in San Francisco, a person who came from the electronics industry. So it's someone who understands that. And so we made that kind of investment to sort of take it to that next level, because within what we had and our knowledge and our reach, we couldn't really take it there.
So just to be clear, Soft Matter is your wearable tech unit?
That's right.
Does that mean you don't do any more wearable tech research, or you still research?
So we still do it. We still develop capability, because some of the talent around creating new technologies, all that still rests within Twinery. And even some of Soft Matter's development capability still lies within us. And so we are in that phase where we are holding hands and not really separated so much. Like I said, we are still within the same premises. We share some of the talent, etc. But as it grows, its competency sort of shifts from being in development and technology more into that execution, mass manufacturing. Those things start becoming more important, and that sort of separates them into that core business set.
Ranil, this has been a very insightful conversation. Anything you need to add to conclude?
Nothing much. I mean, again, around the fact that this is something that we are doing in Sri Lanka. We've been able to be first to market in many things, and I think that capability exists. We can do things that we may think are impossible, and so I'm proud to be a Sri Lankan and associated with a Sri Lankan company, and be able to sort of create this kind of differentiation.
And do you think the fact that Twinery is based out of Sri Lanka is like an emotional choice that MAS is making? Is there a better case for having this, having the team based out of Silicon Valley?
I wouldn't say yes or no, right? I think you're dealt with a set of cards and you decide to play the best game you can.
Right.
Right now, all our infrastructure is in Sri Lanka. We are based in Sri Lanka. We can travel. We can, and some of the reason for our success is also because we are based in Sri Lanka, and as MAS that we are questioning things and we want to do things differently. I don't believe there might be certain things that we do that might be better. And in Soft Matter, for instance, we have our CEO and our marketing head based in Silicon Valley, because it makes sense for that business. So right now it makes sense for us to be based in Sri Lanka.
Brilliant. Thank you.
You're welcome.